I'd go for a
I'll
steak.
fully agree with you.
Yeah.
But let's continue to, I
Mhm.
think, go there if you guys are okay with it.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Jeff, with the using it as a tool or identity thing, and that's kind of
Mhm.
where I was wanting to go
Hmm.
next.
Hmm.
Going back to your analogy about the instincts being like gears that you can shift into, I think it seems like to me that we're designed a certain way, that there seems to be some sort of inherent design in us. And that's why I believe that the types aren't something to get out of, but that your type can actually explain why you're gifted in certain ways. And you can either be designed as a sports car, a Tesla, BMW, a minivan, and what gear you choose, I think, is highly impacted by what kind of vehicle you are.
Mm.
So like my kids like to press the power mode button on my Prius because they like to pretend that my Prius is really fast. I mean, in the
Yeah.
power mode, it goes faster.
Yeah.
But like my fastest gear on my Prius is very different than a Lamborghini's. The big idea is that like a sports car, I think, is going to be, because of its design, is going to be biased towards using going faster, using a fast gear. And I think
Yep.
Prius, again, not a perfect example, but a Prius driver is going to be biased towards using a fuel saving mode. And so I don't know if all of us just come to instincts very neutral and thinking like, okay, which one am I going to use today? I think because of our design that we might prefer one or maybe even two of the instincts over the other to the
Hmm.
neglect of the other.
Hmm.
So that's why I think it might be more static than dynamic. And I get what you're saying, TJ.
Yep.
Like you can use, like from my experience, I could see me using all of them. So,
Mhm.
but in my experience, it feels like we are doubling down on one of those gears more often, maybe because of a design aspect. Uh, maybe it's out of a positive thing. Maybe my self-preservation instinct is to benefit the group, benefit my
Mhm.
family. So I'm just wired that way. And then a team needs all of those dominant instincts on the team. And so that's just from my experience. It just feels like we're maybe biased towards one or the other. We'd love for you guys to just comment on that or push back on that.
Sure.
I love to start. I feel like my opinions are a little bit more strong on this one. But I likewise think that there are elements of yourself that are hardwired into you when you're born. I think there's nothing wrong with saying that some human bodies, when they are infants, are going to grow into faster human beings than other human bodies. Like there's all sorts of things that we are inherently born with. Some people are far more relationally intelligent and will be throughout their life, just given the hardware that they're handed. I
Yeah.
think, I suppose that's just where my instincts go here, my intuitions go here. In my mind, Enneagram wise, I think very, very early on, your center is established. That might be in the womb, that might be post womb, but sometime very early on, how you're taking in the world becomes established. And I think it's probably established through that relational shame, through fear, through control. I think that there's something about being, for infants, watching infants develop. I think that there's like how they express themselves in the world is coming out of themselves based on how they're receiving the world. Are they terrified? Are they looking for control? Are they looking to be more relational in terms of connecting with the world? I think that's real early. And I think stance flows from that. How do they get what they want? And that becomes kind of ingrained in them. So for me, those two things establish your type. If I know your intelligence there and I know your stance, I know your Enneagram type. And I think everything else kind of builds off that. And so my gut right now is, and you had kind of hinted at it earlier, Tyler, that where you are located often influences quite a bit of how you are with your instincts, the instinct you push into. So I was way more social when I was in high school. I was pushing into that gear because that's the environment that I'm forced to thrive in. And so I have to, if I'm to use the car metaphor, if we're all going 50 miles an hour, I have to be in fourth or fifth gear.
Mm.
Otherwise, I'm not part of the race.
Yeah.
I saw this as you were talking when my wife and I were first married. Her pushing into the bonding, pairing, sexual instinct was much, much higher because that was the place we were at that point in time and how we were, the two of us left everybody and went to a different city to live by ourselves. And so that's the gear that she has to be in order to survive and thrive. And so I suppose for me, the gears in terms of where you are in life, and TJ mentioned it before that he would likely be more social, but because of the pain disease that he experiences, self-preservation comes up much more frequently and has to
Mm.
be a gear that he shifts into. I suppose that's where my intuitions are. We are responding to those exterior elements coming at us by shifting into one of the gears. I think that would be where I presently land, is that this is kind of how it works. But I do think we get very comfortable with one of the gears and maybe even choose our path based on those gears.
Mm.
What do you think, TJ?
Thinking about how we are currently, I see that there is a lot of movement and a lot of external forces pushing on. Like they're just, we don't exist in a vacuum. There's things from my experience in my life that influence how my personality was built, and there are choices in and amongst that, and even the way that my instincts have been able to come out has been part of the external experiences. In high school, I had space to allow my social instinct to develop, but I didn't in middle school because I did not fit with those people. I was never comfortable in middle school. And it had a lot to do with my socioeconomic status in middle school, you know? And so seeing the way that all of these external factors play on how we're developed, I just I don't need to put a pin here. I don't This is a space where I don't need to plant a flag.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good, TJ. Uh, there's certain things about this when I read this self-pres 3 description, I can look back and say those these have been, I've always had a vanity for vanity, or however you want to say
Mm,
it, that Beatrice says about the self-pres 3, of really being afraid of looking like I'm
mm,
trying to get attention. Like
mm-hmm.
that's always been theme for as long as I remember. So some of those things are very much fixed. Where I'm learning from you guys is, Jeff, I totally see how, so like a circumstance like growing up in middle school and high school, there's such a social pressure to use that social gear
Yeah.
so much, and even the sexual pairing gear when you're in dating, dating phase of your life. And yeah, I can see how external forces and circumstances can really change things for
Mhm.
quite a while. So I'm totally with you guys on that, and that makes a lot of sense.
Development of human beings. I'll be curious how brain physiology and Enneagram overlap.
Mm.
If it does overlap, I think that that would point to a lot more things that are quote unquote true about Enneagram. If Enneagram is just a language describing what's taking place at a physiological level, that might open some of those doors.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, Tyler's on it. Is it making sure he's doing all the interviews to help inform the rest of us?
Perfect.
Uh, you got two fun things that you learned recently, Tyler?
Yeah. Um, I'm reading a book by Antonio Barbato.
Uh-huh.
Especially for those of us in the US, we can get into our bubble, and it's just great to read authors who aren't in the US to
Mm-hmm.
realize the
Right.
Enneagram was created not by an American,
Mm-hmm.
and we can get into our bubble. And so I was recommended this book recently on subtypes, and it's just been great reading something different. And I love how he was taking even some other views on like the law of expansion and retraction, and kind of using it to expand our view of instincts.
Can you define the law of expansion and retraction?
Yeah, that's he said that the self-pres sexual and social instincts can help us to retract or expand as organisms in the world.
Mhm.
And he said we kind of start with the sexual, the pairing, which has an expansion sort of quality to it,
Mhm.
of wanting to expand yourself, to take up space, to enlarge either yourself or your ideas, to multiply, to reproduce. And then the social we can help us to adapt when we start getting around other people and communities and tribes, to adapt in order to survive, to continue to reproduce and take up space in the world. Or self-preservation is a retraction. It's I got to retract or shrink back in order to optimize what I'm doing. And I think what was the most helpful is just understanding that sexual pairing kind of expansion definition. Because usually when we talk about instincts, sometimes we just sort of dumb it down to, sexual is about just being around one close person or friend or lover. Social is about this instinct of needing to belong to the group. Self-preservation is about being introverted or wanting your alone time, and that's kind of a minimalistic view of the instincts. And the way that he was talking about expanding and retracting really caught my attention, especially for those who are like use that sexual or pairing gear, and seeing that it's not just about like for you, Jeff, not wanting to just be around one person and getting a lot of life there, but that you have this need to expand, to fill up the world with ideas
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
presence, to take up space. This usually we think of that as like a type 8 thing.
Mhm.
But if you look at like even like sexual dominant fives, they like to touch the world and to connect with the world through usually through like creative outlets, creative means. I think of like C.S. Lewis touching the
Mhm.
world through his creativity and like
Mhm.
filling up the world and space with his brilliance, his brilliant ideas and creativity. Sexual fours too, you can see, are taking up a lot of space, and it can be just as passionate or angry as eights.
Mhm.
Sexual ones filling up the world with ideas or their ideals. And so I just really like it. It's not a ego thing, or it's not a pride thing. It's a really wanting whatever you have to multiply and to take up space. And I can see how that could cause problems too. I think I mentioned that to you, Jeff, that if you are sexual 3, for example, and wanting to take up take up space, push something that's going to go against the grain a little bit, and it's going to make you be like, well, okay, if I take up space, then what if I look bad?
Mhm.
And it causes like an inner tension. But so it's one of the things I've been learning about. Does anything catch your attention as I talk about that?
I think this is right. And in terms of instincts, if we rewind the tape back to biology, where is all this coming from? That would make sense that the sexual pairing instinct would be associated with something like filling up the world, because you birth children out of that space. And the just like at a primal level, that would be like, what does it look like to reproduce as a mammal? It would have that element to it. I'm going to reproduce. And when I reproduce, I suppose what goes through my mind is I need to build a larger home or structure for my offspring to fill. And so that dominating, I need to dominate more land. I need to build more things. I need to expand. As you're talking, that's what I'm kind of hearing in terms of, so especially on the spatial side, I've mentioned this a handful of times, but I do commercial real estate, and acquisition is a big concept for somebody like myself in terms of looking for things that are undervalued, you know, taking them over and then utilizing them at a high level such that I expand. That is in some ways the target or the mark of success for somebody like me. And I suppose that's coming out of an instinctual motivation place. I don't like, presently a lot of my conversations with my wife are, we don't need to build anything else. Like, they're like, we can be incredibly content where we're at and simply put our energies into the things that we have, and that would be just fine. But I have that gear of, oh, but I could take over this other thing and make it amazing. And so that's in essence what I suppose I'm hearing there.
Well, and,
Um,
and just from I am so interested to to look into this material now, because it'll come as a huge surprise that I don't see it the same way as you two. And the idea of expansion within the sexual nine, I actually don't see expansion there. I see retraction, because the sexual nine disappears into the partner, right into the other.
How would you describe risk taking in nines? When nines push into risk taking, what does that look like?
Me personally,
Yeah, I mean, so in the pairing bonding
mhm,
instinct for a nine is going to be the risk taking.
yeah,
Is it that you're losing more and more of yourself in engaging the single person?
and willing to do things that we wouldn't necessarily do on our own,
Oh, sure. Okay,
because
yep.
it's
Because
about
you've
the other
paired.
person's
Right.
desires. Yeah.
TJ, I had to say to that, sometimes it's a both and, it's not a
Mhm.
either or.
Right.
So there's a way you can nuance the expansion
Yeah.
for nine. He uses like the sexual metaphor of like when we get turned on and there's that sexual energy. Both partners are expanding they're expanding to come together to connect. So
Mhm.
you as a sexual nine, there might be a little more flirtatiousness, a little more
Mhm.
energy of expanding their personality in order to merge with and
Right.
like and become a magnet
Right.
with their partner. So
Yeah.
there's different ways of
Well,
nuancing it.
and my empathy comes through in my sexual instinct in a big way, because like I feel the others, I absorb and feel the others' feelings. And part of the expansion that might happen there is that I'm expanding to help them hold this thing.
I think he gives it a metaphor of like a plant too, growing and expanding in order to reach out to receive more sunlight
Mm,
and make that connection. So there's an
sure.
expansion to connect. So yeah.
Yeah.
And TJ, I thought of something too about how you talked about in the workplace, right? In your coffee shop,
Mhm.
you feel like that you have that sexual pairing gear that you use quite a bit, right?
Mhm. I do, but I think social comes out more like as the sort of manager of the space. My social is stronger. But in the individual interactions with some of that take place there, a lot of it is sexual.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
When you said that, I thought about myself as well in terms of the static, dynamic kind of tension we were talking about
Hmm.
before.
Hmm.
I come off very like I use that pairing sexual pairing gear at work. I've transitioned out of ministry, so I'm not on a team anymore. But when I was at
Hmm.
the team, when I really liked our team. There's a lot of people on the team that I really liked, and I would sort of put that gear on a lot in order to
Hmm.
joke around, be
Yeah.
playful. But now that I'm not on a team, like just feel like my default is self-pres most days, and it takes a
Sure.
lot more effort now that I don't have to go to work and it's not expected that I come into work. It's like it takes a little more energy to turn that gear on to want to go connect with a friend over lunch.
Sure.
It just feels like that self-pres is always causing me to retract by default.
Mm.
But then
Hmm.
when I do go hang out with lunch with a friend, I get charged in that moment. I'm like, oh, this is so good. This is where life is. And I always forget that. I forget to take that initiative sometimes to reach out. But then when I'm forced into the context, then I'm just turning that gear on a lot more. So
Hmm.
that's what I was thinking about when you were talking about how you feel like you're not self-pres at work.
Sure.
Or one last thing, I think is really interesting. I interviewed Dr. Sam Greenberg and Lindsay Frazier, both therapists, on my love and relationship summit, and they're both helping couples work through the sexual part of their relationships. So we were just talking about this, but they said they actually start with the instincts first. They said that the instincts are actually the knowledge about what their dominant instinct is actually more helpful than knowing their type.
Hmm.
So they actually start with the instincts. They said like sexual fives, for example, are actually have a way more in common with eights when it comes to their sexual lives, because they're both looking kind of for the same things. They're looking for verbal cues, verbal turn-ons. Not to get too explicit, but you get the point.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was interesting. Like as we talk about the importance of instincts and type, and I just found it interesting, curious that they flip those around and actually try to
Hmm.
get to the instinct first, because whether you're a social 9 or social 3, they're saying that you can often go through sexual dry spells, a lot easier than some of the other instincts. And for them, it's more about, even sex is more about bonding relationally than it is about the physical act. Whereas sexual dominance it's more about the physical act and the chemistry. And for self-preses, they might be more into, self-stimulation or sex as comfort, or the bodily side of it versus the bonding side of it. And so as they were talking, I thought that was very, very fascinating. And so that's just something I've learned recently that I thought I'd throw in there.
I think it's helpful. Obviously, we did the podcast with you on relationships. And when you bring in the different elements to a human personality and say this person, is a withdrawn type versus a reactive type, that affects how they are in a romantic relationship. And it's worth naming. And I suppose what goes through my mind here is, what is the question at hand? What is it that is being thought through in terms of our dynamics? Because especially with our lovers, how our type wiring and the tools we employ most end up engaging the other is really important to name. This has been one of the most helpful things for me in terms of Enneagram. So
I love that you brought up that, like, that first year or two of a relationship, that initial pairing, the sexual instinct is high, but it's not the dominant instinct all the time, right? And it may be really strong in that initial coupling, but how strong it is and how strong it stays will depend a lot on the individual and the two people that are involved, and all of that stuff, and understanding it through this perspective of the relationship, the romantic partnering, the sexual partnering, whatever. I think gives us another way to see these instincts more clearly. And I'm really interested to look into this material, but yeah, that's definitely not a place I could start from.
TJ, just a quick comment on, I just appreciate what you said about not being quick to teach. I just think that's a type 3, and probably a few other types too get into trouble with this. But Suzanne Stabile says, what, to 2s, what is yours to do? What is yours not to do? I think for 3s, it's like, what is yours to achieve? What is yours not to achieve? And sometimes I think 3s get excited and want to go and write a book on something they're not competent about. Just excited about it. Oh, let's
Sure.
or let's go do this. And 3s need to slow down and go slowly.
Yeah.
And there's things that I've been quick to put out that I've regretted later. And so as I come to this conversation, again, it's all in pencil.
Right.
It's all I'm learning from you guys and being stretched by you guys. And I could be wrong. Right. And I just think when you gave a good warning of, hey, let's as Enneagram teachers not get too excited about complex things that we don't know anything about, whether it's subtypes or sexuality, and start producing social media slides and all that. We have to put in the work, put in the time.
Right.
So
and at the very least, we just need to acknowledge that we're learning about it too. Like, I think this has come up a lot with our own work as we've gone through the last several years, and just being humble enough to know that we don't know all of the answers, and holding it with, like, that this is what I see. This is what comes from my own experience. Does it work for you?
Good word.
And there's a reasonable chance that in 5 years we'll say something totally different, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you this up front, Tyler, in terms of like the books that you've done. Is it already the case that you're thinking, oh man, I really should have wrote this in the book on 4s? That was missed that one.
Actually, not to push my own opinion again here, but I think if I would have known the subtype descriptions 5 years ago, it would have helped me in my books, because sometimes I double down. I can see myself doubling down on themes that are like general characteristics of a certain, that are more prone to one of the dominant instincts.
Yeah.
So I'll read this chapter and be like, oh, this will hit home for social threes, but this will not hit home for self-pres threes.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So I actually feel like it could have made my writing better if because then I would have been like, well, some fives this, but some fives won't, and like just making that kind of nuance as I'm writing rather than someone assuming that I'm speaking to all fives. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I find that when listening to other Enneagram podcasts that are similar to ours that are more typology oriented and just talking through how the types are, so often they tend to emphasize the behavior of the social variant because that's who they've worked with and they've experienced in that social setting. And so that's what's materializing and coming out. Or they have personal relationships, and then it would be, if they have like really strong personal relationships, you know, it may be the case that, okay, I've experienced this person in a one-on-one situation. I think the self-pres folks often, like self-pres threes, I think are a great example of this. When talking about threes, I don't think the self-pres three really, the behavior of the self-pres three comes out as much as, you know, threes, they're in those other gears.
When I was writing my type 5 book, I had a chapter on the castle. You know, we talked about that being a metaphor, and I sent it to my friend Lisa Vischer, and she's married to Phil Vischer, who is a self-preservation 5, and she just said, well, that's going to resonate with Phil, but that not a lot of social 5s are going to resonate with that, so you should maybe bump that chapter back a little bit and hit on more of the common 5 themes at the beginning. Like, just that was really helpful to know. Oh yeah, that's right. Like, we can't again put all 5s in the same box, that they're all gonna withdraw to their castle. There's a lot of social 5s that look like 8s, and so we got to be careful. So yeah, it helped me to get that feedback from her.
Yeah, that's a good word. Bang.
Yeah,
that's great, guys. Love my conversation with you. Hope you did too.
Yeah.
Always.
Especially anytime we can convince Jeff to start talking about sex, I think we're in good shape.
Get him going.
It's gonna be a party. Tyler, we're gonna talk to you in the future. When we start our 20 question series, you are tops on our list. I may have I mentioned this to you? If I haven't, then I'm going to make a pitch. All right. So for Tyler and for everybody else that we love, we like having on the podcast, we long to have a set of interviews called 20 questions. We come with 10 questions. You come with 10 questions. Answers need to be brief. And just to hit where you at in your Enneagram study, where the big ideas that you're kind of wrestling with. And on our end, we'll look at your work and say, what do you think about this, and this? And real interested as we transition. We're doing most of our stuff. We're transitioning to YouTube. We really want to cut these up into shorter, more shareable fare. But as it stands, if you are interested, we would love to have you in the future. I suppose you're on my short list of people to talk to.
Would love to. I can't. I'm already thinking of questions for TJ.
Everybody loves TJ.
We love you too, Jeff. I wouldn't be here without you.
Well, friends, it would mean the world to us if you shared this episode with somebody you love, preferably somebody who really gets into instincts and has done the 5 years worth of work so that they can go into the deep dive. And they should probably listen to our entire series first. Share the subtype series in instinct series with those that you love who want to go deeper into their Enneagram study.
And hey, maybe if it's a sexual partner, then you should start with the instincts. So
y'all can find more of our new work on YouTube, on Patreon, and at aroundthecircle.org. And as always, we appreciate stars and reviews, especially TJ, who needs these to feel comfortable in the world.
I don't know who I am without those stars.
Just I gotta walking around confused.
I got a 2-star review at the coffee shop the other day.
Oh, there it is.
And
the coffee shop.
But I just don't care. Like, okay, that's not fair. This person, like, I want them to have had a good experience. But for the most part, man, I just don't know how to engage the reviews. I just don't care.
I'd let the listener know that TJ's a liar. The maddest I think I've ever seen TJ was when early on he got bad reviews at his coffee shop and he knew the person, and this person was cut off
It was a specific. I don't even remember what you're talking about. That was so long ago.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, I got a 1-star review on my Type 9 book because I talked about George Floyd and the injustices, and so he gave me 1 star saying I was getting. Why did I make the Type 9 book political?
See, that's
And
the kind of stuff that like some people have opinions like that, and it has nothing to do with the quality of your book. It's that they didn't like one thing. Online reviews just don't care. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, go give these guys a review. It's just so simple to be able to leave a review, hit a star rating, and it helps the algorithm to push this amazing content out to more people. So make sure to go do that.
Tyler, it's always a delight talking with you, my friend. Much love to you and your family.
Until next time. Yeah.
Come on. Well, TJ, you got anything else?
I got nothing, man.
CJ Wilson, he's officially awesome. Tyler, you are the man. Go buy some of them 9 devotionals. Actually, really worth looking at tylerzack.com, and for not only the upcoming Ennea summits that he will be conducting, but all past Ennea summits are online already, are they not?
Yes.
You can go see what's already been done.
Yes.
So, I mean, this has to be upwards of 100 and some odd interviews. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I'll keep releasing them and doing 2.0 versions of them. So I'm going to do a faith-based summit here coming up again, because I haven't done one of those in a while, and around spiritual formation, but then another one on probably subtypes and instincts, and I'll have to have you guys on that to
Nice.
give your caveats.
Everybody is releasing on instincts right now.
Tis the season.
Jeff and Beth McCord launched on this. Hunter Mobley just posted something today that he's doing a bunch of work on it.
Nice.
It's a lot of people just got the bug here recently, so
I
they
think
were clearly listening to our work, and they're
Yes.
like, "Well, I need to."
Yes, you guys have been doing this.
doing.
We're just copying you. But since everyone is, I was kind of along with everyone else, like, hey, yeah, subtypes great. Da, da, da. But I think your guys' pushback and thoughts need to be shared in these conversations. So that's why you're going to have, I'm doing it based on demand. I've asked people, okay, what do you guys want to learn about? And the last group of people said mental health. So I did a mental health summit, and that was, 3 times more popular than my previous ones on love and relationships. So I thought love and relationships would be the most popular topic. But no, mental health was.
Wow,
that's interesting.
So, I'm just excited. I love just curating the best voices out there like yours and bringing people together to learn. It's just a great time.
Dang. If you wanted to do all right, so idea, if you wanted to do like a little summit, mini summit, I'm really, 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 really interested in Enneagram and generations. This would be another, you had brought up your national origin determines a lot of how you see the world. Your race determines a lot of how you see the world. Just love the hell out of work that's on generations and the difference between how Gen Z and millennials see the world versus boomers versus Gen X versus silent generation. The values, the cultural values of generations, I think are really interesting. And then there's the overlap with your type. So it's not just 108 variations. You have to add generations on top of it as well. So there's really 556 different types. So I'm Gen X 1 with a 9 wing and a sexual subtype.
You're just gonna make TJ roll his eyes.
Or my head's gonna explode.
Incredibly important to how I see the world, y'all. And I'm a white guy. Now we're adding, now it's 1,282. Yeah.
Oh wait, you're a cis hetero white guy.
Oh man, it's just getting all right. So there's 10,285 types. Anyway,
I had a girl on one of my summits who had a theory, and she talked about how different types will fit into more masculine boxes, feminine or androgynous. Like, sure. I mean, there's so many different ways you can talk about the Enneagram, and it's all helpful. As long as it doesn't become too muddy and keep you from doing your work.
And that you're not using any of those different things as excuses.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good place to land here is like, for me, the conversation of instincts, this is the boundary. This is about as wide as you want the conversation. You can easily do Enneagram and race, easily do Enneagram and generation, easily do Enneagram and national origin or Enneagram and gender. But at some point, you're moving beyond the Enneagram circle into
Right.
other realms.
Right.
And
Yep.
that's a book of essays. You want to do a book, like a book of essays would be Enneagram and then
Yeah.
you can hit all those other topics, but it is moving beyond the Enneagram.
Well, it's all helpful. I just think there needs to be a progression and not get too muddy at the beginning, like TJ's pushing for.
Bang. Well, he's Tyler Zack. He's doing some great work out there. He's TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome. I'm Jeff Cook. Hey, guess what, TJ?
What?
Who you aren't just isn't interesting.
Love it.